The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
Tonight on The Agenda.
The necessity of the talk didn't arise because we are black bodies. The necessity of the talk arose because of what is done to black bodies.
Then, later tonight.
We've got people that are streaming, and the components of how we stream, how we end up appearing online is a part that can enhance online instruction, and how video games themselves always provide clear objectives and how that would be useful within the context of a classroom.
There comes a time in every parent's life when they have to sit their tween or teen down and have the talk. Not the birds and the bees talk, the other talk. And come to think of it, it's generally not all parents. It's really a burden that falls mostly on the parents of young black kids, which sets up a whole series of questions to ask. So let's ask them. Joining us now in Los Angeles, California, Earl Turner. He's a psychologist and founder of Therapy for Black Kids. And here in our studio, Kathy Hogarth, Associate Vice President, Global Strategy at Wilfrid Laurier University. Valine Campbell, author, advocate, and founder of Zuzu Media House. And Brandon Hay, he is the founder of the Black Daddies Club. And we are delighted to welcome you three here to our studio. Earl Turner, great to have you on the line from much sunnier Los Angeles, California. Let's start. I don't want to assume everybody knows what the talk is, Valine, so why don't you tell us, what's the talk?
Ooh, the talk. It's a conversation that opens the door about racism for children specifically. Much of the conversation is geared towards boys specifically because of the interaction that can potentially happen and often does happen as they age and get into their teenage years. And that is for black boys specifically. And what
Just to be more specific about that, it's the concern that if a young black man is pulled over by a cop or is stopped by an officer in a mall or something like that, here's what you do.
That's correct. And it's typically for people in authority and how we need to actually address people in authority. So yes, as you mentioned, police officers, perhaps a supervisor, manager at work. So there's divisions to it, but it's still overall a talk and how we have to perform when it comes to these environments.
Brandon, were you given the talk as a child?
I mean, no. I think I was born in Jamaica, and I came here when I was 10, so I didn't have that conversation. My mom didn't have that conversation per se. I think for myself, though, and I think this is where this is one of the reasons why I started the Black Daddies Club, was to sort of connect with other elders, other black men, to sort of talk about, like, just to kind of show me or just teach me the ropes. And raising 3 black sons, I recognize like the talk has had to look very different depending on their age.
How old are your 3?
So my eldest, Tristan, he's turning 21 this year. Julian, he's turning 19, and Elijah is turning 17.
You gave them the talk, I presume?
I gave them the talk and a bunch of different talks. So with Tristan, we've had to have like this conversation. As the eldest, he's been in a different space where, you know, when he was 14, the talk was about black men and sexuality. And we went to see Moonlight and have we went to eat afterwards and sort of like have a conversation about what black masculinity is or what it isn't.
That was the best picture of the year a few years ago.
It was, yeah. And for me, that conversation was like a highlight for me, right? Because it kind of showed me, how far along my sons are compared to when I was their age. During COVID, having the conversation, you know, with after George Floyd and the brother Ahmaud in Atlanta who got shot, I found, and talking to other black men within Black Daddies Club, we felt like there was a numbness we were feeling because we didn't have those spaces to sort of like connect with other black men, to sort of do our own healing. Having the talk during those times was really difficult because as a black man feeling the hate, it's hard to with our children or with my sons around being hopeful, when sometimes I don't feel hopeful in those moments. And then I think the last thing I want to say is, we had another talk when we saw the raid on the Capitol Hill, where I was seeing white folks from different ages with a level of privilege. And for me, what it taught me, because each time I have these conversations or the talk with my sons, I always wonder, am I passing on fear? Am I passing on my own fear to my children, to my sons? Because they're in their black skin, because they're male, I have to tell them not to wear certain colors or not to wear certain hoods, even if it's winter, you know? So, but what I saw in those white folks having security guards and police run is that their parents had a different conversation with them. There was a level of entrenched, I'm right. Entitlement that I don't feel when I talk to other black men, other black fathers. There's that same concern. Are we passing on that fear that we have, where I could be driving in my vehicle and I know I didn't do anything wrong? As soon as I see a police car behind me, my butt tights up.
Right.
I clench up.
Lots to pull apart
Yeah.
there. We'll continue to discuss that. Kathy, you got a teenage black son?
I do.
You do?
Yes.
Have you had the talk?
I've had many talks.
What age did it start?
I think it started for me before they went into elementary school.
That young?
Yeah. And the talk evolves over years, over time, right? But at elementary school, it was the talk about how to keep himself, understanding that black boys in school, diagnosis around ADHD, everything in school becomes a problem for black boys. Behaviors that are typically routine for other kids becomes problematic for black boys. So they become disordered within the school system. So I had to have those talks early on. But one of the things in the talk, I also think it's important that I have the talk with teachers so they understand what to expect of my black boy.
So the talk's not just for kids, it's for others.
Yes, because I think for too long we focused on, we need to keep our black boys safe, our black children safe. And that's unfortunate that we have to engage in this level of protection and safety just to keep them alive.
And we should say your son is one of the top divers in the whole country.
Yes,
he's potentially going to be an Olympic level diver someday.
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
Yet I'm having the talk because even his successes as an elite athlete doesn't keep him safe.
Okay, Earl, we've set the table for you here, so come on in here and tell us about, in fact, if you could build on Kathy's answer, how the talk evolves over the years as children go from elementary school to high school, etc.
Yeah, well, I think, as a psychologist, we oftentimes talk about the need to be age appropriate with those conversations. So I think a big piece of it is, as kids are younger, you may be giving them really basic, minimal information. And as they get older, you can have more of a dialogue and conversation with them about their own perceptions and experiences with the world. And that's something that I oftentimes really talk with parents about, is that you don't want to always sort of give your side of position on what you think happens in terms of racial bias, and that it really is helpful and important to understand how they see the world. So I think, a point that was talked about earlier is, am I putting this fear in my child that may not be present when I have this conversation? And so I think, one of the things that's really helpful is really opening up that dialogue to get their perceptions. What has been their experiences based upon their skin color at school, in the community, playing sports, and then be able to go from there to give them the tools that they need to be able to navigate those different experiences that they may be having based upon those racial differences.
Valine, could you pick up on the education angle as well that Kathy raised, namely that, black kids may not be allowed to get away with as much bad behavior as white kids are allowed to get away with in schools.
Yes.
And it may be a case that administrations or teachers see white kids acting a certain way and they don't, they say, well, that's ADHD and we have to, take a clinical approach to that, whereas it may be a more disciplinary approach for a black kid.
Sure.
How do you work that out?
Kathy made a very good point in making sure that you are present and you speak to your teachers, be involved in every aspect of their conversations. And also making sure that even as a collective, speaking to other parents as well, anytime that there is any kind of discord in the classroom, they need to know who you are, right? I think too, a lot of Black children overall, I'm gonna say girls as well, because of course I had the talk. You did not have the talk, but I had the talk.
From your parents?
From my parents, namely my father. Part of that is also, you spoke about behavior, but it's also academia. You have to work harder. You have to make sure that you work 3 times, 5 times, 10 times harder than your counterpart.
Because?
Because of the color of your skin.
Because the assumption is there's systemic racism in the school system.
That's correct. And you have to make sure that you are seen. You are able to achieve the same things that everyone else in the class is achieving. You're able to show that you are capable, you're competent, you can excel in all areas of the academia or curriculum as any other child.
Kathy, how do you be present as a parent and advocate for your child effectively while at the same time not being labeled or targeted by the administration or the teachers of the school as that parent who complains all the time?
I think it's really a tricky situation. We talk about presence and advocating for our children. Let's be clear that not all Black parents have the capacity or the ability to be present and advocate. What we see oftentimes is many of our Black parents in densely populated areas, they are working minimum wages, multiple jobs, can't make it to parent-teacher meetings, can't give the phone call during school hours, and those kids get dinged. Those parents get labeled. It is not that they are unwilling or negligent of their children. It is that they do not have the capacity. But how do you balance between being a strong advocate for your child and not being that parent? I'm okay with being that parent.
That's right.
You don't mind, because if it's in the advocacy of your child,
Yes.
be that parent.
That's right, because the cost is too great to not be that parent.
Earl, let me get you back in here because you do an organization called Therapy for Black Kids. And, well, I guess there could be some people watching or listening right now who think, therapy for kids, period, full stop. Why do we need therapy for Black kids? What's the answer to that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think for me, one of the main reasons why the organization is because we have oftentimes not had these conversations about Black kids and going to therapy. And so I think we really do have to address this misconception about therapy not being beneficial to the Black community. And for a time, it's been seen as something that's for white people. And so I think it's helpful to have these conversations to encourage that Black families and Black kids to be able to seek out those services to get the help that they need to address a number of concerns. And additionally, being able to really focus on this aspect of racial socialization, which we've been talking about with the talk. And that I think for many parents, they do feel some sense of fear about how do I have this conversation is appropriate to talk about with my kids to not make them, be harmful about society. And so I think it's really helpful to talk about what are the ways that we can have these healthy conversations about race and racial differences and prepare them to deal with this bias in society without oftentimes always having this negative outlook about how they may be perceived within society.
Let me do a quick follow with you, Earl, and that is, do you think in too many Black families there is a suspicion of psychiatry or psychology for whatever reason?
I think that there is a suspicion. I'm not sure if it's unfounded. I think that we know from history that there has been mistreatment by the medical and mental health professional towards the Black community. And so I think that's a valid concern that many individuals have about how they engage with the mental health field. And so I think, we have to be honest about that and really try to address how do we get more clinicians and therapists to engage with families in ways that are healthy and that they don't engage in any sort of internalized racism or microaggressions towards those families that they're working with.
Okay, Brandon, I want to circle back to you now and again unpack that first answer you gave a little bit more. When you, with your 3 boys, and first of all, did you do it all together or individually? The talk.
Some talks were together, like, you know, George Floyd, like Biggs, you know. And then some talks are like individual, like one of the elders within the club said like he talks to his son, like he has teachable moments. So like if he's listening to, like for example, I'm dropping my son, Elijah, he runs track. And you know, when each of my sons are playing different sports, that's a one-on-one time.
Gotcha.
So if there's a song coming on or they're singing a particular lyric, that's a question of like, hey, what does that song mean to you? Or having those conversations.
Okay, the ultimate question then is how receptive have they been over the years to the talk from Dad?
I think the conversations varied based on what I've been hearing, based on their age. Sometimes, like the younger they are, it's sort of like, okay, cool, like, okay, Dad, you're going off again, or
that doesn't sound receptive to me.
It can or cannot be, because it's sort of like so my approach was having them, you know, whether it's reading or something, but I would ask them to write something down. Like I'd want not a report, but like a 1-pager or a half-pager, just something I know that they're sort of taking it in. Mm-hmm. Now, they may not like me in that moment, but I feel like later on that there's something that seeps in. There's something, and as my sons get older, so when the George Floyd thing happens, my eldest son came to me and was like, yo, Dad, I feel like right now it feels like the movie The Purge, and it's black folks who are getting eradicated. How do I respond to that?
How did you respond to that?
I think for me, it was acknowledging that what he said was profound, and also that there's validity in it. Because there's a point where, as a parent, especially of black boys and of black girls, but is that it moves, it has to shift from trying to protect to also just trying to equip. Mm-hmm. And for them to sort of have the understanding of what's happening around them, to sort of break this down, and for my son to be like, yo, you know, bring in pop culture of this movie to be like, okay, this is where it feels like this.
Let me pick up on that word equip. Kathy, when you tried to equip your son with the knowledge that he would need to negotiate his way through society, how often did you hear him say, oh, gosh, there she goes again? Did that happen?
Oh, yeah, that happens.
And how do you handle those moments?
And I think it's the long view. Always taking the longer view, not the moment. Mm-hmm. The moment is important because it is in that moment we are passing information, education, empowerment. But the longer view is what we keep in mind. In the moment when my son is, oh, Mom, you've told me this a million times, right? But now he has his driver's license, he's driving about, and I say to him, okay, so where are you? Be careful. This is what happens. If this happens, this is what you do.
Has he ever had one of those moments?
He has not had one of those moments.
Good.
Yet, he recalls it. And that, for me, is the important thing. He can confirm to me, as I have today's talk with him, yes, Mom, I know.
You do kids' books, right?
I
You've
do.
got a children's book series?
Yes.
Okay, tell us about that and how it contributes to this conversation we're having today.
Sure. There are 3 books to the series, and all 3 open different conversations. I try to write about real situations or real life situations that have solutions. They're educational, yet fun and easy to understand.
Give us some titles.
So, for example, the first one is The Amazing Zoe Defeats the Germy Germlins, right? If you can kind of put it together, that book was written during the time of the pandemic. And I opened the door to that one just because there was something very unusual happening, right? Kids had questions. I saw books coming out, but there weren't many books that told the story from the Black perspective. And keeping in mind, it was the Black community that was heavily hit during the time of the pandemic, and in the case of most healthcare situations. So I just felt it was really important to tell that story. The second story is called The Amazing Amazing Zoe, a queen like me. And that one has really taken off as well. And I'll just give you a little tidbit about that. Zoe and Caitlin are best friends. Caitlin is white. They like to play dress up. And one day Zoe says to Caitlin, you know what, I want to be the princess. I want to dress up as the princess. And she's told she can't because princesses don't look like her.
Ooh.
So yeah, she of course runs home. She's upset. And her parents open the door to educating her about Black queens that existed in the past and present.
I watched the Grammys the other night. I know there are Black queens. I mean, come on. Beyonce.
But even outside of that, I'm talking, because especially we're right now in Black History Month, a lot of the conversation is around, of course, educating all about the history of Black people. But many times, especially in the classroom, it starts off with the stories of enslavement. And we totally want to move from that. We want to open the door that are all encompassing of who we are as a people. And a lot of the history, of course, a lot of the history goes back to pre-colonialism, when there were kings and queens. There are kings and queens to this day that people still don't know in various parts of Africa. So that was the purpose of that book, right?
The Amazing Zoe. We got to look for those series.
Yes.
Okay, great. Earl, I'll get you back in here because, you know, again, you're walking a fine line in terms of equipping and educating young Black kids for what potentially lies in wait for them out there, while at the same time not trying to terrify them. What adverse psychological consequences do you worry about as you do your work?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the things that we know from understanding the impact of racism and discrimination is that kids may have increased anxiety, symptoms of depression or low self-esteem as a result of these experiences. So I really appreciate what Valine mentioned about her book series, because I think we do have to balance this conversation around the talk so that we're not all talking about the discrimination and the oppression that we may experience as Black people, but also that we celebrate the cultural pride that exists within our community to acknowledge those strengths and accomplishments and creativity within the Black community. And so I think in those ways we can have kids understand that, yes, you may experience some negativity in society based upon your skin color, but there are also these really amazing, significant contributions that we have made as people, and that you can also make as an individual as you grow up.
Kathy, we're talking about why it's incumbent for Black parents to have the talk with their Black kids. I want to turn that on its side a little bit. Do you think it's incumbent upon non-Black parents to have the talk with their non-Black kids about this subject?
Absolutely.
And how does that look?
See, one of the things I say to folks is racism is not a Black problem. It's everybody's problem. Racism wasn't created by Black folk. It was created upon Black folk, enacted on Black bodies. Dealing with when we talk about the talk is about physical safety, the talk is about psychological safety. And keeping society safe, keeping our Black children safe, is keeping our society safe. It is all our responsibility to have the talk at our dinner tables, with our children, with our colleagues in the lunchroom. It is all our responsibility to have the talk and hold us each accountable for the ills of racism. Hold us each accountable for the things we say or do. Because the necessity of the talk didn't arise because we are Black bodies. The necessity of the talk arose because of what is done to Black bodies.
Understood.
Can I add to that?
Please.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you opened the door about the conversation is not only for Black children, it's for everyone. And what that conversation looks like, I want to kind of open the door on that. And it's more of talking about being an ally, how to become an ally when you see injustices happening around you. What can you do to speak up? What can you do to help change the narrative of what is being placed upon Black people or anyone who is going through discrimination? So I just wanted to kind of piggyback on that a little bit.
Beautiful. Brandon, of your three boys, has any of them ever been in a circumstance where it's good they had the talk because they needed to know that information because they encountered a situation where they needed that information?
You know, last November, my eldest son got into his first car accident. And it wasn't, he wasn't at fault, but, hearing him talk about that experience of sort of sitting on the sideline and no one sort of looking for, no one sort of paying him any attention, and then the police coming and,
Tell me about the other driver.
The other driver was a woman, made a turn at a red light, and he got hit. But there was a lot of folks that were going to this woman's attention. And he spoke about the loneliness that he felt sitting waiting for the paramedic. And as a parent, my heart was sort of
He was okay,
He was okay, but I think when I got to the emergency, his mom was there and the police was just coming in, and I was asking certain questions around: is there going to be charges laid? And there was, but not for him. But just the fact of being able, and I think he also he did a firefighting program, which I think it normalized him talking to folks who are first responders, which includes police or TPS. So I think that was helpful. But I also feel that for all my 3 sons, there is a level of conversation to have with them around that they're beautiful, that their blackness is a good thing. And I kiss each of my sons on their foreheads and to let them feel and we greet by hugs. So their first touch point with masculinity has to be through myself. And I feel, so whether it's taking my son to go see Moonlight and expanding his idea of what black masculinity is and isn't, this is the opposite of what I was told, where there's a box there's a masculine box, and then the black masculine box is almost even smaller. So for me, it's about my job as their parent is to keep on expanding that. So even when they're meeting a police, I still have a conversation of how to sort of respond. And there's a fear, again, that fear that came up, that comes up in me, and it's also for them to sort of, to have those conversations. The other piece that I also want to make mention of, it's about also creating community. So Black Daddies Club, for me, it's about community building. So when my sons come out to a summer hike and they see other Black parents and their fathers, or we go to a Raptors game with a group of Black men and their sons, that idea is normalized of Black men and our greatness. So this idea of Black men not being engaged Black fathers, that's not normalized.
You put the lie to that.
It's myself, but also I'm a part of a community of other Black men that's showing up.
Yeah. I got to stop you there, unfortunately, Brett, because we're out of time. I'd love to hear more from all of you. That was terrific. Can I thank Earl Turner for being there for us on the line, the psychologist from Los Angeles, California. Therapy for Black kids is what he does. Valine Campbell. Okay, we're going to look for the adventures of Zoe as we go forward. The amazing Zoe. And Kathy Hogarth from Wilfrid Laurier University, Brandon Hay, Black Daddies Club. We're grateful to all 4 of you for joining us here on TVO tonight. Many thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Canadians play video games, and after the pandemic era that put adults and kids online so much, gaming reached an even broader audience for fun and learning. That experience revealed both the potential and problems with video games for youth and the rest of us. How can parents, teachers, students, or any gamer keep the good and lose the bad? Let's ask. In San Diego, California, Julia Rivard-Dexter, co-founder and CEO of Shoelace Learning. In Montreal, Quebec, Jeffrey Dervinsky, director of the International Center for Youth Gambling Problems and High-Risk Behaviors at McGill University. And here in our studio, Christopher Alexander, professor of video games at Toronto Metropolitan University. Welcome to you all. Now, just before we start, in the interest of full disclosure, we'd like to remind everyone that TVO is a provider of the province's distance and online learning, not the agenda or the journalism part of the organization, but the ILC, the Independent Learning Center, which has been a distance learning partner with the Ministry of Education for almost 100 years. And with that, let's talk video games. All right, Julia, I'm going to come to you. According to 2020 stats, 61% of Canadians under the age of 65 played video games fairly regularly. If we look closer into that data, that rate was up 89% amongst those between 6 and 17 years old. Set the stage for us. How prominent are video games right now in our culture today?
I think it's undeniable. They're everywhere. Kids are playing them all the time. I have 4 kids, and I think we do quite a good job at our place in regulating video game time. But it's a great time for them. It's a time for them to engage with their friends. It's a time to learn new skills, and we can't avoid it. It's a new medium. It's an engaging medium. It motivates kids to push themselves to be better. So I think it's something that we should really watch for even more and figure out how we can leverage to deliver learning and things that are positive for kids.
All right, Chris, how about you? How prominent are video games in our culture today?
So I would imagine that the stats are fairly high. As you just mentioned, video games are prevalent not only via playing, but also in how they've influenced things like our cell phone UI, in the way that people interact, chat, cultural concerts, and the like. So they're a predominant space in our culture right now, I think.
All right, and Jeffrey, let's fill out the rest of it. How would you say, when we look at video games in our culture today, how prominent is it?
It is very prominent. We know that 98% of young boys are actually playing video games, and we know that it's been normalized. So it's not atypical. We no longer have to sit at our consoles and play the video games. We go online. We can play them on our smartphones. We could play them on our iPads or on our laptops.
All right. Chris, in your TED Talk, or your recent TED Talk, you argue that video games can help people tap into and level up the way they learn. Break this down for us.
So in the TED Talk, I talk about how video games can cater to human learning, the way that humans engage with information via audio, text, and video, how they can enhance online instruction. So we've got people that are streaming, and the components of how we stream, how we end up appearing online is a part that can enhance online instruction, and how video games themselves always provide clear objectives and how that would be useful within the context of a classroom. You starting to learn something, knowing exactly where you're going, and then subsequently what the reward will be at the end.
All right. Jeffrey, I'm going to come to you. The World Health Organization has recognized gaming addiction as a disorder, and you were on the advising committee for that. What makes this a clinically diagnosed condition?
Well, what we've noticed worldwide is there's a growing body of literature which has not only talked about the positive aspects of video game playing, but also the negative aspects. That when individuals become overly involved, in a study that we did in Ohio, we found that over 60% of young people in high school and in junior high are playing more than 2 hours a day on their video games. And so this became a real problem because it was interfering with a wide variety of issues with respect to their socialization. Eating disorders were resulting from this, and a wide variety of psychological behaviors. And so as a result, the World Health Organization looked at all the research and decided that they should include it in their ICD-11 as a potential disorder.
All right. Julie, I want to get your take, and I'm going to get Chris's take on that as well. Clinically recognized as an addiction. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, first of all, we have to recognize that not all games are created equal. There's a lot of games that give kids experiences that are positive experiences. And I think that there's also the argument, and I know there's a criticism of the gaming community that this is an argument they always make, but it is also the role of parents to step in and make sure that kids are not engaging too much in screen time generally, gaming and additional screen time. I do understand, though, it can cross a line. It can cross a line for kids, and it can turn into addictive behavior, and that's a problem. And we have to address it, absolutely. It doesn't mean that we don't use video games for good, but I think it is something that we have to get more savvy about as a society, as parents, as educators, to make sure that our kids are engaging in healthy screen time. And I know there's a way to do that with video games.
Chris?
So I love the conversation surrounding the potential of the addiction, but I really enjoyed the suggestion about parenting. Now, some of my work delves into internet gaming disorder, which affects roughly 0.5 to 1% of the global population. And what we also look at is digital parenting, which refers to parents, for some reason or the other, can't afford to spend time with their kids, and as a result are giving them technology as a result. So the question that I think we often should be asking is, who controls access to the video games? And again, as mentioned, all games are not created equal. Which kinds of games are creating these kinds of issues that were described by the WHO?
I want to play part of your TED Talk. Let's get a roll on that.
But I'm also using the mechanics of video games to trick students into exploring complex concepts like history, sexism, racism, corporate culture, and tokenism while we play this game together.
All right. In that you're setting up sort of what your students and how you sort of teach them, sort of the other side of video games, not just, points and sort of levels and all of that. There's a whole other level to it. Tell us a little bit more about what you're trying to explain.
So right there, I'm talking about how when we look at things that span outside of just the playing of video games, there's so much more we can learn. That specific example is from a video game called Virginia, where you play as it is a newly hired FBI agent who is tasked with internally investigating another person, female, who just happens to be the only one in the precinct. And the game itself is based on a true story. So in my classroom, I have students take on the role of Ann Tarver and play live in front of 271 students with mics unlocked. And oftentimes, it's the first time that they see hands that don't look like theirs in the game. That's a conversation. It's the first time you pull up, no spoilers, to a particular gas station and something happens and you realize it's happening as a result of who you are and what you look like, and we talk about that. But then the students have to go and build video games based on their own experiences, and that to me is the true power of the medium, storytelling. We keep talking about inclusion. How about teaching students how to build that inclusion themselves?
Very, very interesting. All right, Julia, you founded the organization Shoelace Learning, which combines gaming, psychology, and development to provide game-based learning solutions. I'm hoping you can break down the difference here between gamification and game-based learning.
Sure. I think we see a lot of gamification in learning. So that might be a learning program that uses badges, rewards, currencies to help kids get motivated. Game-based learning is different in that you're using the game as the medium to deliver the learning. So it's game first, and the learning is delivered based on triggers that kids run into as they're playing the game. What it does really well is it enhances motivation to do the learning. And that's what we need. I've spent years shadowing teachers in schools, and kids are checked out. They're checked out of their learning, and then in their home environments, they've got super rich mediums that they're engaging with, and we need to meet them where they're at. And so game-based learning is, I still believe it's really emerging. I haven't seen a lot of great examples of where it's been done well, but I see huge potential in this sector.
Jeffrey, you work with many youth and parents who deal with gaming addiction at the center. I'm hoping you can share with us sort of how those conversations begin, but ultimately, how is it that you are helping everyone involved there?
Well, let me just say that I certainly agree with Julia when we look at games, they're not all created equally. And we're looking at gaming as a global area here, but different games have different components to them. Not all are educational. We have first-person shooter games that also create a wide variety of problems. But typically, we get calls from parents all the time saying, my child is gaming too much. He's only interested in gaming. He doesn't want to go out and socialize with his friends. He doesn't even want to come up for dinner unless I bring him his dinner because he's so involved in the gaming, and that they have a difficult time getting their children to stop the gaming and doing other activities, whether they be educational activities, social activities, recreational activities. And while it's really important, and both Chris and Julia mentioned the importance of parents in this, parents are frustrated. They don't know what to do. And when they start setting limits and their children don't adhere to those limits, they throw their hands up and they give up and they say, you know, there's no point in doing this anymore because all we're doing is fighting. But this is becoming a major problem. It's difficult for parents to identify the amount of time their children will be gaming because we don't know what the adverse consequences are. So children who want to game more on the weekends are fine. If they're gaming to the detriment of their academic work or their socialization, this is a problem.
Julia, how can we promote responsible gaming?
Well, you know, I think it starts really young, right? You know, as a parent, again, parent of 4, I've seen it. When kids have an iPad for a while, and you try to take it away, you get extremely bad behavior, and you have to be disciplined. You have to make sure that you're disciplined with your kids at a super early age, and teaching this digital responsibility at an early age is what sets them up for the future, and it's no different. It's just like eating healthy. You know, you really want your kids to understand that early so that they can, you know, employ those techniques later in life and be healthy. I also think just thinking of the design of these games is so important. Making sure that you're inspiring positive behaviors. One of the beautiful things about gaming is that it gives you a space for positive failure, right? It builds confidence. Kids are struggling with confidence these days because there aren't many spaces where there's positive failure. And so I think really identifying the ways that games can be successful in building strong, capable, confident young people is kind of the first step, and then building, you know, around that to make sure that we're being thoughtful and deliberate in our design of video games for kids. And then we have to be responsible. It's our responsibility as adults to make sure that we're putting the good games in front of kids so that we are building future generations who are capable of doing what we need them to do, which is to think critically, to have confidence, and to want to participate. So
Chris, I do want to get your take on that, only because I feel like you are in that 1% who probably, when we call you the professor of video games, you play a lot of video games. And this is something that you've done as a kid, as a youth, and you still do today. How do you balance these conversations and promote responsible gaming while also indulging in the beauty that is video games?
Excellent question. So I've been playing an average of 2 to 4 video games since the age of 8. And as the age of 14, I had said to my parents, I just want to play video games all day, every day. And my parents said to me, absolutely, as long as you pay for it. Uh-oh. And then I had to find my first job, and that was at a local restaurant. Couldn't wait until I was 16, but they empowered me with the idea of, if you want to do something, you're going to pay for it. You want to play online? Oh, guess who's paying for the internet? So this was my empowerment, and now that's what I teach my daughters. When they're interested in something, how are we going to do this? But the biggest strength is teaching people to build. When I wanted to play online games via a computer, I had to build it. So I learned how to build a computer, and that's part of what I'm doing now, trying to teach kids how to build and provide for themselves and to help support themselves, because there was no situation where I could have said to my parents, I want, and then finish the sentence. Everybody needed to work in order to get the things that they wanted to do. So that's my approach. I just talk about how I was raised and how I do it now.
All right, I want to pick up on something that Julia had mentioned in terms of the rich mediums that we have, that students have after school. And one of the things I'm sure parents may not know what it is, but they've heard it, is Twitch. You know, it's like, what is this, you know, platform that my child is watching hours and hours of programming, watching someone play video games, or so forth. And there's the argument that, you know, you can learn a lot more than just that. Can video games and digital platforms like Twitch replace school curriculum and class instructions? Or is there, maybe I'm going too far, but, you know, oh no.
Not at all. So in the recent talk, I talk about how Twitch, owned by Amazon, is an online streaming platform where people are known to watch other people play video games, but there are people that are teaching others how to paint, how to play piano, how to cook, and even how to code. And so these are things where you're looking at, if in 2019, 2.78 million concurrent viewers were watching, it can't all be entertainment. And so when you look at the nuance, you look at the Amazon categories of art, programming, there's science, there are people that are learning how to paint miniatures. And I often bring Twitch into the classroom to show 3D artists, for example, how they can start giving their own superpowers of artistry leverage by connecting with community members. And that's part of the power of Twitch. But on top of that, it's incredibly high production value on Twitch. So the production values that we see on some of these streamers, were we to implement that in traditional classroom instruction for traditional online instruction, promise you engaging would be higher because it looks like what they see when they go home. And as Julia said, meeting them where they are.
All right, Julia, I want to get your take on that as well. I might be going a whole stretch here by saying, does something like Twitch and other digital platforms slowly replace our educators in some platform, or is it just the platform that changes itself? But can video games and digital platforms sort of replace the curriculum or class instruction?
I think today we're in an era where it's enhancement, it's augmentation for teachers. These are tools for teachers to use. I believe in teachers deeply as coaches, as motivators. The problem is today they don't have that chance in the classroom to be able to do the teaching, the motivating, the coaching, because they're so busy managing behavior, because we're losing our kids. They're just not engaged. Now, do I think we can replace teachers? I don't think so. I really hope we continue to have a model where teachers are coaching the kids. But I do see video games evolving to be more transformative in education. We are going to get to a point where we're in immersive environments where we can actually learn by doing in-game spaces, which is really exciting. We're not quite there yet, and we're going to need very good research-driven design once we get there to make sure we're providing kids with great experiences. But it is possible to have a really different, transformative education experience, and we're heading that way.
I want to stick with you because I want to ask, in the ideal world, in the perfect world, where these two, what for the longest time was their separate realms, we bring them together. What does that look like in a classroom, in the perfect world to you, where we use something like Twitch or another digital platform and we're in a classroom?
Well, I don't think you have to be in a classroom. I think we're reinventing what schools look like too. And I think that the idea that we are no longer in a position where we have one person teaching to many. We're in the position now where we can have many teaching to one. And that's one of the things I think is so exceptional about using technology in education is we can help young people broaden their context, really have a huge number of data points from which to start thinking critically, thinking creatively, and we need future generations to have these skills to be able to solve some of the complex problems we have. So I see a very different school of the future, one that uses digital to be able to enhance and transform education, and teachers and coaches there to really help kids be move down that path in ways that they're excited to evolve. So I think it's going to look very different.
All right, I want to change gears a little bit. Of course, we are, still going through the pandemic, and I know that had really changed the way that we consumed gaming. Jeffrey, how did the pandemic affect our gaming habits?
Well, we know that young people or even older people have played a lot more games during the pandemic. Parents were working from home, their children were home from school, and parents were trying to focus in what they had to do. And so in many cases, they often told the kids, if you're finished with your work, go play games, go on your computer, go on your iPhone. And so this has produced a whole generation of young people who played a lot longer on their consoles or on their smartphones or on their computers. And as a result, it's now hard to wean them off of this. I think it's really important, and both Julia and Chris mentioned that parents have a very important role in this. I don't think most parents really know what their children are playing on their computers or on their smartphones. And so I think it's incumbent upon them to actually look at the games that they're playing. And maybe rather than just shutting off all the games, they could balance those games. Some educational, some recreational, some much more enjoyable for the young person.
All right, Chris. we saw many students struggling with online learning during COVID. How do we effectively incorporate video games into school and work environment? Of course, as a professor, COVID was probably not kind to you as a professor with students staring at you at a screen on Zoom, just kind of looking at you with blank faces and so forth. And what I'm trying to get at is I think there is this connection that needs to happen. You had mentioned sort of the level of production that we get when we see gaming and how we do that. How do we effectively incorporate those two together?
So I actually saw an increase in engagement in my classrooms online because my setup mimics that of Twitch streamers, because I myself am a Twitch streamer and a YouTuber. So I afford the students the ability to add comments live during class, which appear on screen over my feed, as well as part of my class in teaching game design is running a roulette throughout 270 students, and the lucky winner gets to take control of my machine and play the game like Virginia in front of their peers for the first time and dissect it. We have a live Let's Play, which is common on Twitch. We all play together and dissect the game, and we ask questions. For research, we call that Think Aloud Protocol. So I'm inducing Think Aloud Protocol during my live stream class that's hybrid. When the pandemic has ended and we've returned back to Toronto Metropolitan University in the Red Bull Gaming Hub, I live stream my in-person classes as well because I believe it can and could be a standard so that students who are familiar with my approach to teaching could stay at home if they wanted to because I'm teaching them how to build video games. Some of them have the computers at home, but those who don't can come into the lab and we're all working along. They can talk to each other back and forth. So I saw it as a huge advantage to show post-secondary education and the world how we can transform education in a way that mimics what our students are used to engaging with.
All right. Julia, I want to come back to you because I want to get some sort of real-world examples of what you think, whether they're video games, whether there are platforms that really do a good job of mixing both the education side and the video game themselves. Maybe not your favorite video game, but video games that you think are doing the job or are getting there.
So I think that one of the best examples I've seen, and one that we've tried to emulate at Shoelace with our games, is Dreambox. It's a math game, very adaptive to each unique learner's abilities, which is beautiful. Again, confidence building, so you don't feel like you're at the bottom of the class. So that's a great one. There's also a Quebec-based company that's focused on giving teachers the opportunity to build games that they can deliver their assignments with, which is awesome. The way we're doing it at Shoelace is a little bit different. We've built a learning platform with adaptive learning and the ability for teachers to deliver assignments, but through any mobile game a child chooses to play. So we've built it to plug games into, and then we use the game triggers to inspire the learning content. And I think that's an interesting approach because kids are smart about what they like, so we can't force feed them games necessarily. We want to give them agency to be able to choose games that suit their likes, but in a way that actually enhances their learning. So not a ton of great examples yet. I really do think we're still in kind of the baby phase of game-based learning, but new things popping up all the time.
Jeffrey, video games aren't going anywhere. We established that from the conversation. We just established it from the onset. It's a fine line in terms of, you had used the word, an example that, how do we wean off some of our youth in sort of their gaming? But there's a fine line there. Of course, gaming will be there in terms of how it is being used. Any advice to parents, to students that you have that you think that they should be taking into account as we move forward in the next 5-10 years?
I think Julia's point earlier was that we have to really start when children are very young. And what we really need to do is set limits and also help children maintain those limits in terms of the amount of time and the frequency in which they're gaming, as well as the types of games that they're actually engaged in. Some of the games also have what are referred to as loot boxes, and these actually stimulate or simulate gambling. And not only that, but people are telling us that their children are losing lots and lots of money playing these games.
All right. Chris, you teach video game design. You wrote a paper on inclusivity of video games. I want to get into that. How could the new generation of game designers shape this industry for the better?
So I can give some examples from some of my students this year. There are games about immigration from China that my students are working on. There are games about coping with celiac disease that one of my students who has celiac disease is building herself. There are other games about being seen and feelings of being seen, a third-person walking simulator with conversation that's being built by another student. There are games about flight. There are games about mystery, magic. The number one way we can include ourselves is to include ourselves. You can build these spaces, and there are platforms like Unity, Unreal Engine, and this is what we're teaching, among other platforms, for you to be able to tell your story. If there's an issue with loot boxes, you can build a game that doesn't have loot boxes. If there's an issue where you don't see yourself reflected, you have the ability to build yourself into the narrative, in addition to a narrative that speaks directly to you and others like you.
Very, very interesting stuff. Julia, the last question goes to you. What are you most excited about when we look at video games and the future?
I'm most excited about educators like Chris. most excited about the fact that there's a new generation of educators who understand the power of being able to motivate kids in a new medium, and who are willing to experiment and try new things and get kids engaged. It's a beautiful thing to see these teachers work in classrooms and really be the heroes for their kids, because they understand that there's a way to really get them engaged and motivated. And yeah, Chris is just a perfect example of that.
I'm not going to leave you here blushing, so maybe you get the truly last response in terms of what you're excited about.
Thank you, Julia. I can't wait to chat with you after this. I just feel that we have a responsibility to understand and dissect the medium. In my classroom now, we have both men and women programming games, and we talk about what's this discussion about inclusion, and many of the folk in our class are like, wait a second, I'm being part of the change. To inspire the change is one of the greatest honors I'll ever have as an educator, but now is the time.
All right, we are going to leave it there. Chris, Julia, Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining us on the program tonight. Really, really great stuff.
Thank you.
It's great. Thanks.
Tomorrow on the agenda.
The tax system has to be fair in order for people to accept it and to cooperate with it. And so anytime there's a sense that things are not fair or they're getting less fair, I think people start saying, well, we need to fix it. And often people want to start by fixing it with something new, like a wealth tax, instead of fixing the system that we have.
That's tomorrow on the agenda.